Sports, school clubs, birthday parties. It doesn't get much better than that when you're in school. All kids want, when they're younger, is to make friends and feel accepted. Sometimes it can be hard, and kids will feel discouraged. If someone is a little bit different, others may call them weird or socially awkward. For a lot of kids, it's not their fault. Autism spectrum disorder, attention deficit disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, anxiety, etc. According to National Public Radio, these are all things that about 17% of American children suffer from. As a person who works with children with ASD and personally suffers from OCD and anxiety, I know it can be difficult in social situations. Feeling like you aren't good enough is so hard, and then getting in your own head, feeling like nobody likes you, is even worse. I believe it is so important to include children with exceptionalities into typical social settings at a young age. It's not only wonderful for that child with the disability, but it's great for the other children involved as well. Now let's talk about inclusion altogether. Early childhood inclusion embodies the values, policies, and practices that support the right of every infant and young child and his or her family, regardless of ability to participate in a broad range of activities and contexts as full members of families, communities, and society. As you can see in an article written by the National Association for Education of Young Children, it is just as important to them as it is to me. Including children with special needs in all sorts of settings with typical children is crucial for them. Not only should these children be included in educational settings, but sports, clubs, and such. It will boost their self-esteem, but also truly help them with more developing. Yes, children with these disabilities may need accommodations and modifications, but that is such a minor thing when it can be so important to a child and he or she's family. For example, my cousin who just graduated from high school was diagnosed with ASD when he was 2.5 years old. Ever since my family discovered this, we did everything we could to make sure he lived his life like a normal kid. He participated in everything kids his age did, and he got to experience those things. He was a part of sports, prom, and even learning how to drive. The word disability can be taken in so many different ways. The true definition of disability is a physical or mental condition that limits a person's movements, senses, or activities. People can be diagnosed at any age or in any part of the spectrum. Disabilities are so vague because you can have someone who is very high functioning, where someone would have to have no idea they are a bit different, or you could have someone who is severely disabled. There are so many different things to do and ways to help children with disabilities. When you have a high-functioning children, it can be a little bit easier to throw them into a smaller sports setting with some support and watch them blossom. I work at a nonprofit private school for children with disabilities. 2 of the program directors that work there created a sports team for the very reason of inclusion. This team is a balanced mix of typical children and children with high-functioning disabilities. The mission of this organization is to provide athletic opportunities for all kids. They hope to foster not only a competitive environment, but also one which promotes tolerance, awareness, and inclusion. My own brother was a part of the team. He does not have a disability himself, but it was so wonderful to see him interact with kids his age who just needed a little bit of support but loved to be included. Seeing the smiles on everyone's faces and the difference in every kid at the end of the season was so heartwarming. I felt it was such a great experience for every party involved, and it was such a great idea on the creator's part. Not only will a typical child help be an influence on a child with a disability, but the child with a disability can help educate the typical child. When including a typical child into these situations, it can open their mind and heart to something new that they never knew existed. If I haven't convinced you yet that this is such an important matter, then I suggest you put yourself in their shoes. If you've ever felt isolated or even a bit different than your friends, I'm sure you can understand how some of these kids may feel. Many of these children may not understand what being included is like because they don't know any different or any better. A lot of this can be so important for the families. Making a parent of a special needs child smile is such a gift. I've heard so many parents talk about how all they want is the best for their child and how it is so important that they are treated like everyone else. With including children with disabilities into social settings with all different kinds of peers, it can truly set them up for success. With 2020 approaching and disabilities being more common in children than ever, it is so important to start taking these things into consideration. I love the children I work with more than anything, and I know it would mean so much to them if they could always be treated like everyone else. It can be difficult for people who don't understand some of these disabilities, but I hope by hearing me speak today, you have taken a bit of information you might not have known before. Inclusion is one of the most important things in a young child's life. Don't forget what they say, no children left behind.